Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Pai, in 2016, almost half of all venture capital funds invested in this country went towards Internet-specific and software companies. That's $25 billion worth of investment. At the same time, to meet Americans' insatiable demand for the Internet, U.S. broadband and telecommunications industry invested more than $87 billion in capital expenditures in 2015, and that's the highest rate of annual investment in the last 10 years. We've hit a sweet spot. The investment in broadband and wireless technology is high. Job creation is high. The venture capital investment in online startups is high. So these net neutrality protections are a problem that doesn't need any fixing. This system is working. Yet, Mr. Chairman, you're proposing to undo the open Internet order. What is the problem, Mr. Chairman, that you are trying to fix?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think one of the concerns that we have raised is that these regulations might be dampening infrastructure investment.
They might be, but there's no evidence of it.
Well, there has been evidence raised, and that's part of the reason why we are testing this proposition in the context of the notice of proposed rulemaking. Some had suggested the FCC should simply issue a declaratory ruling saying that the facts in the law are so, and that's the way it's going to be. But we wanted to test this proposition in an open and public process.
Well, you know, publicly traded companies are required by law to provide investors accurate financial information, including reporting any risks or financial burdens. However, I have found no publicly traded ISP that has reported to its investors by law that Title II has negatively impacted investment in their networks. Many, in fact, have increased deployment and investment. So what is the evidence that you're relying upon that you proceed with towards a potential repeal of these net neutrality protections?
Senator, in the notice of proposed rulemaking, we cited some evidence that among the top 12 Internet service providers, in terms of size, that investment was down. Also, a number of smaller providers, including municipal broadband providers, fixed wireless providers, small cable companies, and others submitted evidence. But we want to hear that perspective as well that you just outlined. And so we want to make sure what are the facts in this context. And again, this is part of the reason why we have a notice and comment process, as opposed to simply an administrative decree that we find that these rules are in fact harming them. We're going to get rid of them immediately.
Yeah, well, since these net neutrality rules have been in place, the Internet has thrived. We've seen tremendous job creation. It's the spot where younger people, newer companies go. It's an entrepreneurial engine of growth, the greatest that we've had in generations in the country's history. And so from my perspective, as you look at this, I feel that the evidence right now is not there. And if it was, the companies, the broadband companies themselves would have been, in fact, providing that evidence to their investors in their filings, and they have not done so. So anecdotal evidence is not evidence. Okay? There is no factual basis for that change, and I just think it's going to go right to the heart of the Internet's growth and job creation in the coming generations. Now, if I could, just moving on to the E-rate, I was the House author of the E-rate when it passed in 1996 into law. Is there any question in your mind, Mr. Chairman, that this program is working and that the funding levels are at a level that that meet the needs of our country?
Senator, for years I've said that E-rate is a program worth fighting for, and that is not an abstraction to me. I visited an Alaska Native school in Fort Yukon, Alaska. I visited libraries in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I've seen how the program is working, and we want to extend that to every student and every library patron in the country.
So you will commit to us that you will preserve the success of this bipartisan program and not decrease its funding level? Senator, programmatic changes that undermine or weaken the E-rate?
Senator, we have not made any decisions on that score. We're trying at this point to make sure that the program works.
So you won't make a commitment that you won't reduce the funding?
Well, Senator, we're studying, obviously, ways to improve the program, if there's any way to make it better.
Mr. Rosenworcel, will you commit that you won't reduce the funding?
E-rate is our nation's largest education technology program, and it is a successful one. And I believe that the changes that were put in place in 2015 have been successful. They have reached schools and students in every state across this country.
Mr. Carr, will you commit that you won't reduce the funding?
Senator, thank you. I have an open mind as to what the budget and the numbers should be, and happy to make a decision when the record's developed on it.
Yeah, well, I haven't heard clear commitments, and I think that's very troubling, to be honest with you, because this is the democratizing force within our society. As each of you made clear, you believe that it's key for our future. Reducing the funding, of course, is not going to help to make sure that every child in our country has access to the technology they're going to need in order to compete not only in our own country, but globally in the 21st century. So I have not been satisfied with the answers which I've heard. Again, Ms. Rosenworcel, are you saying that you will not reduce the funding?
I will not reduce the funding.
Thank you. So, Mr. Carr, Mr. Pai, I wish that I heard the same commitment from you as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.